Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern. As always, Remington Tavern can be found at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have their daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m., You can check out their Instagram at RemyTavCincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, George, there has been plenty going on in the city of Cincinnati, as we were discussing in our pre-show. But I guess let's start with the team that's currently playing right now, as they didn't get to play their game against UConn last Tuesday, as we discussed. It got rained out. We discussed that last week, but they did get to play all three of their games against Oklahoma. I know they were worried about weather there. They end up taking one of three in that series against Oklahoma, a top 10 team in the country, and finish in fifth place in the season for their first season in the Big 12. They are now gridlocked with UCF at 5-5 in the top of the 11th, 2 outs. So they did have to come from behind in the ninth, as they were down 5-2, and they came back, tied it up, and
someone just homered.
For they did do that. Yep.
It just popped up.
Just happened live on my phone here. So
just as you said 5-5, my scoreboard switched. It said 6-5. Darn it, the wrong way.
Well, the Bearcats do have the home team advantage in this one, so we'll see if they're able to tie it back up or walk it off. They've been playing from behind pretty much the entire game, but
yeah,
with the season over, were you able to catch any of the Oklahoma games live?
No, I was definitely going to go Saturday. I was originally scheduled to go Thursday, and then they squeezed it to a doubleheader Thursday, and then the game Friday, and I couldn't go Friday, and so I wish I would have been there. My friend was there, and certainly an exciting come from behind finish where it looked like they were basically dead, and weren't going to be able to salvage the final game of that series. And then, my goodness, the young man from Baden who didn't have a home run in his career, playing his final game at UC, final home game, and hits a grand slam to win it. What a story that is. And hopefully he gets a chance to bat in the bottom of the 10th here against UCF and maybe pull off a similar type of heroic like he did last Friday. Because that was a big win for UC. Really needed that. Now they get a couple wins here in this tournament. They got a decent shot to get in, I think, to the NCAAs, but got to get this one against UCF. You don't want to go into these tournaments where you're playing all these games one after another and go 11 innings in your first one, but you do whatever you got to do to win, and hopefully they'll be able to come back for it, because it's been quite a surprising season, and I hate to see it end this way, but either way it goes, I got to say this season's been a success for first-year head coach Jordan Bishel.
Yeah, I don't think you could have asked more going in. He certainly exceeded all expectations by a wide margin. I don't think anybody expected them to finish in the top half, much less in the top 5 in this conference. And honestly, in the second half of their season, they were playing like they belonged around, like getting votes, maybe not in the top 25, but maybe getting votes with the way that they were playing if the season had started at midseason as opposed to the beginning of the season. Now, I do understand that the entire season is what you're getting the votes for, so understandable is they didn't get votes, but they were playing their best ball the second half of the season, bar none.
Yep, no doubt about that. They came on, played a great brand of baseball down the stretch, and we'll see where it leads them down there in Arlington. But I'd love to see them somehow scrap out a win here, and it doesn't look good. But look, as you said, finishing in the top half would have been a pipe dream this season because most people had them picked pretty much dead last. And in fact, I think that's what the preseason media poll had them. Not that
Correct.
the media knows anything,
Right.
but those are the expectations. And based on what they had done coming into this season and a first-year coach and all the things that go with that, I totally understand that. I get that sentiment because I sure as heck didn't expect a whole lot this season. So I was thrilled with what they were able to do, and hopefully they can find some magic down there in Texas.
Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that score throughout the show here, but they did bring in Carson Marsh to pitch here, so we'll see what happens as there are 2 outs, a runner on first in the top of the 11th. Moving topics here, I guess we'll just keep baseball going and kind of get that out of the way. UCF hits another single. Unfortunate.
So 2-1.
2-1, yep.
Yep.
The Cincinnati Reds get a win, a much-needed win. They got one in La La Land against the Dodgers. Shohei, of course, gets his first walk-off hit as a Dodger against the Cincinnati Reds, though, to cap off the series, a losing series, another losing series. I believe that's 8 losing series in a row, if I'm not mistaken. It's been really, really bad, or maybe it's 7 losing series and a tie.
That's what it is.
Okay.
7-1 the last 8 series into tonight. Yep.
So they have an opportunity in this one to get a winning series, starting off with a win. So we shall see. But they get the win 2-0. Andrew Abbott pitched a gem tonight.
Sure did.
We don't get to see a ton of shutout performances by these Reds. So you certainly needed this one to try and get things back on track. But of course, it comes with the loss of Jake Fraley and David Bell, so upset that he was throwing shit everywhere in the dugout, a chair, and he may or may not have broken his hand in the process.
They can take that injury. If he's got a broken hand, that's okay. He can still do what he has to do. X-rays initially were negative on Jake Fraley, but I still hold my breath based on what we've seen earlier this season.
Right.
It seems like every time you hear in-game reports that X-rays are negative and they think he'll be okay, then a couple days later there's another scan and it shows something. So hopefully not. First of all, Fraley wears that guard on his hand. I'm not sure how the ball got him, but it got him pretty good. I mean, he was hurting, and he's a tough dude.
Well, he was so mad. You saw him. I don't know if you watched it, but he did just scream in frustration because he knows as much as anybody. I mean, I don't know if you even saw that his dad has been tweeting about games that he hasn't gotten to start. That's become a thing in the Reds Twitter world. People are keeping an eye on Jake Fraley's dad's tweets when he doesn't start against lefties because of the righty-lefty matchups. No, I mean, say what you want about this team, say what you want about David Bell, but I think tonight just kind of exemplifies this team has not given up, at least in spirit. They want to win. They aren't just out there going through the motions.
Well, you look at the pitching they've gotten, and the starting pitching especially has been, for the most part, winning pitching. If you go through this, so they were 3-15 coming into the night last 18 games. So what, 4-15 now after the win tonight. So that's 19 games, probably, and including tonight, they scored more than 2 runs in probably less than half of those games. That's abysmal.
Yeah,
2 runs or less in easily half of those games, I would say. I don't know. I was looking at it earlier. It was 8 or 9 games that they got over 2 runs in those games. Some of them were in losing efforts. But their starting pitching, we saw Andrew Abbott just come in last year as a rookie and pitch like he'd been a veteran for a while. Like, you don't worry. Graham Ashcraft, he was kind of the same way when he came up, and he's had some moments not so good, but it seems like he's settling down. And maybe the most exciting thing is seeing Hunter Green turn into a pitcher now, and a confident pitcher, as opposed to a guy just trying to throw it through the wall of a barn. he's done a really nice job through this streak that he's got going. His last 6 starts, he's got a low earned run average. He's under 3, darn near 2.5. He's pitching deeper, which has been, I mean, I've been carping on that from day one with this guy. He's got to find ways, when he gets 2 strikes on guys, to put them away instead of having 3 balls fouled off, and then he ends up walking and his pitch count goes through the roof. So I'm really excited about this starting pitching doing what it's been doing. The offense has been where they're struggling, and you look at some of these numbers over the past couple of weeks are so abysmal. And, our man Spencer Steer, who has been nothing but a model of consistency, he's had a couple of walks, but over his last 18 at-bats.
Is he injured?
And now he's injured, some kind of ankle injury. Who knows how much that's been bothering him. I would err on the side saying it has been an issue because he hasn't shown this before. And now all of a sudden he's struggling and he has this injury. And I think he tried to play through it, seeing all these other guys go down with worse injuries. His may just be a little bit of a nagging, but there's something that's bothering him at the plate because he's not the same guy. And so it's good that they can sit him down a couple of days, but then Fraley has what happens to him. It's like, my God, where else where do you turn?
John India got injured tonight. So he didn't leave the game. He stayed in the game, but again, something to keep an eye on because I imagine he's probably of the same mindset as Spencer Steer. Like, I can't leave this game because again, if you saw his reaction when he thought he was injured, he's pounding the ground thinking that he's injured and is going to have to leave the game. And these guys, they're still giving everything that they have. Unfortunately, it's just more often than not enough.
Yeah, and Jonathan's had to fight through some injuries, and he's had to sit out a while. And he tried to play through the one. I guess it was last year or the year before he tried to play through, and it didn't work. So yeah, you don't want to, when you're on a team like that and you're vested in that team and you see other guys going down and now I got a nick, you are doing your best not to let your teammates down and go out there and play no matter what. And I get that and I admire that. And that's what you want on your team. But it doesn't translate into success on the field and at the plate right now for the Reds. They've just it's been an offensive drought here for the last few weeks. And we talked about Steer and how he exemplifies it. On the other hand, Tyler Stevenson has caught fire. Stuart Fairchild has actually played pretty well and hit the ball well. Candelario was heating up there for a while. He's cooled off a little, but there's too much talent for them to continue to have this lack of scoring punch. And we'll see. I mean, the problem is being out all these players. And, we talked about it last week. It's like there's only so much of that you can take.
And we didn't even mention Lodolo's also down.
I know. Good Lord. I'm really starting to worry about him and this injury bug. I really am. I mean, out all last year, beginning of the year, it's like, well, he'll be back. It's something nagging him, and it's a stress thing. And, basically he's done for the year. And now it's another leg issue, a groin issue, which, it was further down in the leg before. But it's like, what is going on there? They got to figure that out. He's got to figure that out because, I mean, with these other young pitchers pitching the way they are, and you throw him in there, and he's been pitching very well for the most part. Even that game, he got off to a bad start and allowed 4 in the first inning or whatever. He settled down and didn't allow another run. That guy's got it. He's just got to stay healthy. So I don't know. I don't know how much you can take, though. The attrition is adding up, and you're throwing guys out there, like Mike Ford and guys like that you've got no other choice. And unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to be able to survive this. I really don't. In fact, honestly, I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to be able to survive this and be there, in August and September to have any chance of getting in the mix for the postseason. And it sounds stupid that I would even bring that up, but it's not too late. If by some chance they can get on a heater here, they can at least make up some ground and give themselves a chance. But with all these guys out, Aaron, I'm just really, really, really not buying it that they will be able to do that. It's too much.
Now, going back to a conversation we had last week about David Bell and what do you do about David Bell when you have all of these injuries? And I guess the only thing you can say, because those are not his controllables, but
No.
the only thing that he is in control of would be the lineups, the call-ups and send-downs. He has, I'm sure, some say in that. Game over. Bearcats lose.
Yeah, that's a shame. That is a shame.
But they, I guess the only thing that I point at would probably be the 1 in 10. I think it is still on 1-run games or whatever that number is at this point.
1 and 11.
1 and 11 now.
And you would think that kind of will even out at some point, right?
You'd hope. You'd most certainly hope.
But the
that
problem
would even out.
is they were really good at coming from behind and winning one-run games last year. So is this payback for all that? I don't know.
I would hope it doesn't take a whole season for water to level out, but
I know. But I worry about such things.
I don't know. I guess I would hate to see a team that is already so we'll say frugal in the way that they spend their money, generally speaking. I'd hate to see them fire a manager and have to go hire a manager if that means it comes at the expense of a player on your roster next season. If this season is all but a wash at this point.
Yeah. And there's probably, as I mentioned a couple of shows ago, a couple seasons ago, when they extended him, in September, and I'm thinking at the end of the season, that's probably it for him. And then they announced in September he gets a 3-year extension or whatever it was. If they're going to do that, then it's got to be much harder on them to launch him now with all this stuff that's gone on. So, and you're right. And then they're in the quandary of, okay, who do we bring in? Who do we have that we, on the other end of the phone that's going to be better and be able to deal with what's going on right now and turn this thing around? And you could go down some of the best managers in baseball, but if they don't have the horses over 162 game season, you can't do it. I mean, pretty much every successful manager has had some seasons where it's out of their control, man. There's too much going on, too many injuries. You can't just, snap your fingers and make it better. And so who would they bring in to make it better this year? I don't know that there's anyone out there.
Yeah, I think that the timing is all wrong if you want to try and improve by letting David Bell go.
And it's funny, last week I'm thinking, well, I can understand them doing it, but at this point, when you're seeing these injuries stack up, and now, as you mentioned, Lodolo's out. I mean, my God, why? I sounded like Lupinella there back in the day. That was a pretty good manager for the Reds, but of course, even he had his seasons where it didn't work. Yeah, he'd sit there and say, my God. And that's probably what he'd be saying this year, too, with all the things that are going wrong for the Reds. And a lot of it out of David Bell's control.
Well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, this is a situation that they've got to figure something out. As a fan, you hope they figure something out. As ownership, I'm sure you hope they figure something out. I would at least think that, but as long as they can keep making money, who knows if they care about the product on the field.
Well, I hope they do. They're what, 8 games back, or that's what it was going into tonight. And a couple of weeks ago we talked about this stretch in the schedule with that road trip and going out west, then coming back home and meeting the Padres and Dodgers, and then top it off with the Cardinals for this 9-game homestand, 3 games apiece. We'll know more after these 9 games, after these 9 home games. We'll know, if they've got a chance or not. But I figured this stretch of the schedule, the road trip backed up with this 9-game homestand that includes the Padres and the Dodgers, would go a long way telling the tale if they're going to be able to compete or not. And so far, it has not gone well.
Randy in the chat said Bob Howsam fired Dave Bristol for not winning the division and hired Sparky.
Yeah, and they had a good team in '69, man. Before they
many
hired
moons
Sparky.
ago.
I mean, that was a bold move. And Sparky, no one knew who the hell this guy was. Like, he was pulled out of thin air and turned out to be one heck of a hire. And not just here, they let him go after, I want to say in 78, and then it may have been 77, but I think it was 78, and brought in John McNamara, and then Sparky goes up to Detroit and ends up winning a World Series up there. But even Sparky had issues from time to time. But, yeah, that Dave Bristol thing, that's funny he brings that up, because that was kind of a shocker. They had a good team. They had a good season, but back then, that was the first year of divisions in baseball, '69. And the Reds, I can't remember what the heck the records were, but the Reds weren't all that bad. But obviously, Bob Howsam thought they should have been better and made that move. And how he came up with Sparky, it more than worked out. Yeah, I'll tell you what. McNamara got fired there in '82. What a lousy year. They had that one year. Was that '81 when they had the split season and the strike? And, that Tony Perez
after 44.
Yeah, that was just wrong. That was wrong.
They did him a little dirty.
Convincing Marge that they had to do it. Hey, they brought in a good manager, Davey Johnson. Don't get me wrong. But Tony Perez getting the axe after 44 games was just not fair. That was totally not fair. But Davey Johnson did a good job here.
Well, switching gears entirely, switching sports even, the Cincinnati Bearcats land a commitment from Dylan Mitchell of Texas. He played for the Longhorns last season, where he averaged 9.6 and 7.5 rebounds, playing in 72 for the Longhorns. I believe he started in 71 of those 72. I believe he's 6'8". He can predominantly plays the 4 spot, can play the 3, can play the 5 in a small lineup. What were your initial thoughts, though, when you see that Dylan Mitchell, a once top 10 by all, pretty much any ranking system out there, a top 10 kid coming out of high school?
Given what's already on this roster and what's coming in, and that they were able to sell this guy on the program and to come here and play and fight for minutes, that's huge. I think it's really, really, really huge. You talk about a stacked roster, and if these freshmen have anything at all like we think they do, it's going to be a fun season. I just think it's tremendous that they were able to go out and get this guy, convince him to throw his lot with the Bearcats, because obviously there's a lot of other places he could have gone that probably had a clearer path to big-time minutes. But the fact that and I don't want to say I was shocked, but I kind of was, because we're in Cincinnati, right? We're not used to having nice things and people. We're not used to people picking Cincinnati when there's other options that I don't want to say that are better. That's not the right, but might give him more opportunity.
Sure.
And so it is nice to see. It is so nice to see. And it says a lot about Wes and the staff and what they're doing here. And I talked about last week that if they can, convince these kids to stay and stick it out, which they've done, the main ingredients have stayed put. Not a lot of teams can say that. A lot of teams have lost a lot of good players, including Texas and this young man. So the fact that he picked Cincinnati, I am going to say I was somewhat shocked, but just for the reason I said, because that usually doesn't happen here. But something's going on, and that something is very, very good. And, it's funny. Somebody texted me today. They're like, God, I didn't know James White was on the Timberwolves staff in the NBA coaching staff. And James White is a guy, 20 years ago or more, I guess a little more than that. But UC was stacked with guys like that back then, guys that you kind of forget about that were damn good players and McDonald's All-Americans and highly sought after players. And it's nice to be getting back to that because they are doing that again. They're starting to stack this talent, and it's really that made me think of that. It's like when I saw the James White, and I'm thinking about all the players they had back then. And all the talent, and then it's like, God, they're getting back to that now. They're getting back to where, they don't just have 2 or 3 go-to guys that may or may not be able to bail you out, and that's if they're having a good night. They're now at a point where they've got options all over the place, and this is another one. We want that inside score, and then you see what this kid does. On the offensive glass and just rebounding in general. I mean, my God, he freaking hunts rebounds. And on the offensive glass, he puts it back in, finds a way to do it, and several different ways to do it. And he uses them all. And so it's a great get for them. And, you look at the overall numbers, and they may not jump off the chart at you, but his numbers in Big 12 play are pretty damn impressive, especially that rebounding number. And that's just, man, that there's no better way they could have capped this offseason than getting this kid. I'm somewhat stunned. I mean, and I'm forgetting about Page, and it's just like this is good.
Yeah, they're running a little deep now. And you're certainly excited about the numbers. You mentioned what he did against the Big 12 last season against Cincinnati in the overtime win. He had 10 points, 4 rebounds in 37 minutes played. But Chad brought up last night. He believes that this is maybe a better version of John Newman. We finally have an answer for replacing John Newman, as he is a defensive specialist,
right?
And kind of brings that prowess back to your starting lineup. I think it's safe to assume he's going to be a starter here. But that begs the question, George, have you given any thought to what the starting lineup might look like next year?
Oh God, no. I hate to do that, but oh my gosh. I mean, he's got to be in there. So, what? Bandago, him, Seamoss, Dan, and Jizzle?
I think that's my 5. That's what I said last night.
I mean, that's pretty strong. Think about that, because you're looking coming in the last year, you're like, okay, Dan needs to take a step, but he was kind of counted on to take that step and be a guy in that lineup. And now you got 5 options. I mean, 4, and then Aziz, we know what,
right.
His offensive game maybe struggles down there in the post some, but
if they can figure out how to throw lobs, his offense would go up significantly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I just it's exciting to think about that, and then you're like, okay, then who comes in, and you start looking at the bench, with guys like Page and Day, CJ. They've got some options.
Hickman,
yeah, exactly.
Tyler Betsy.
Think about that. You know,
Tyler Betsy, Rayvon Griffith,
Raymond coming in, right?
Josh Reed. There's some dudes.
Exactly.
They're
I mean,
running deep.
they're stacked. You know, there's no excuses coming up, and that's where the pressure is on now.
Well,
What
I guess
the Snap have to get some wins because there's not going to be many games where the other team has a hell of a lot more talent than you have.
I beg to differ with you, and I say that because there are 4 teams in the Big 12 that are right now considered top 5 teams in the country, and a 5th team in the Big 12 considered a top 10 team in the country. So you got 5 of the top 10 in the Big 12, and that's not including Cincinnati.
So how many teams out of conference will they play that have more talent than what they have?
They're playing 20 conference games this season. That was announced yesterday, where they're going to play 2 games a week, no bye weeks. I don't know if you saw that or not. That was announced yesterday, though.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess that would leave what? You're playing, what, 30 games? 20? How many games you play in a regular season?
God, I don't know anymore. 30?
30 or so?
It's got to be more than that. If you're playing 20 conference games, probably 32.
31. There we go, 31. So you got 11 games outside of conference.
So most of those games, they're going to have at least the same amount of talent, if not more, right?
Yeah, you would hope so. Although
I'm looking for big things here, Aaron. I'm looking for big things.
People have Xavier ranked.
Jesus.
People have Xavier ranked above Cincinnati right now in the preseason rankings. So we'll see. I guess that'd be the only team potentially.
Yeah, and I don't know how good they're going to be this year. I really don't. I mean, there's definitely some talent and guys that can play on the offensive end, but I don't know. And, you know, a lot of it for them is health on those big guys. So they're banking on, you know, Fremantle's got to have that foot healthy, and we know how those foot injuries are. You know, you hope the kid's over it and past it, and he'll be fine for his sake. You know, you hope Hunter's fine. But, you know, you're rolling the dice a little bit on that inside, but we'll see. We'll see. But I just really do feel that I feel they have the talent that we don't have to go into games thinking, holy God, we need a miracle. Chad's
dropping the out of conference there in the chat. Xavier, Dayton, Villanova, North Kentucky,
NKU,
Georgia Tech, Howard, and Morehead State.
So they play NKU over at Bank of Kentucky Center, huh? Is that a road game? I think it is.
Wherever the Norse play.
Well, they need to go back there. After that fiasco a couple of years ago.
After the embarrassment that was.
Oh, my God. I don't think I've seen a worse second half of basketball in my life out of UC than, well, yeah, I probably have. But that was
probably have.
I know I've seen some worse first halves.
I don't know, just exciting times to be a Cincinnati Bearcat, as this is probably the deepest that the roster has been in, I don't know, a decade plus.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see how this all shakes out and who does end up starting and what the rotation is when they finally get to the point where and who knows, they may not have to shorten it a whole lot. You sometimes get to a point where you have to, but my God, they got some options.
Well, switching gears once again, there are some things going on in the NFL that I wanted to get your temperature on. First and foremost, before we go into the Bengals, this is something that I have ranted on for years, George, and I am excited to see that it has become a thing that they're going to run in some of the preseason, but the NFL is going to test optical tracking system for line to gain rulings in the preseason. They're finally going to chip the ball, George. They're going to chip the ball, so we're not just trying with 78-year-old eyeballs that are out there on the sidelines wearing referee shirts, try and just one-eye it, trying to figure out where that ball may or may not have been, setting it down, ruling it from again, just using your eyes from the center of the field out to the sideline where they've ruled the ball, and then running it. There's so much going on where we're just guesstimating. It's beyond me that this sport has done as well as it has. I'm excited to see that they're trying to finally. I'm sure the technology's been around for probably 15 years, but we're finally seeing them make the change.
Yeah, I've always wondered. Nobody makes more money than the NFL. Nobody.
Vegas does.
And Vegas probably does, but a lot of that's probably because of the NFL too.
That was where I was going with it.
But
maybe why we were still eyeballing things.
Tennis kind of figured it out, right?
Yeah,
for a long time ago. And I'm going to defend the guys in stride. I think they've done a damn good job for the most part. There's many games I've been watching and said there is no way. And then they go back and show the slow-mo, and I'm like, God, that dude was right. And I'm looking on a television. What do I know? And that guy's down the line. But they're pretty darn good. However, if you're going to improve it and get it right, because there's so much writing on this. There is so much writing on this. You've got to do that. You do have to do that. And the linesmen, the refs, all those guys, they should not take offense. They should embrace this because if anything, it takes a lot of load off of them. And now they can maybe worry a little more about penalties and other things that also are an issue. I just think that to have that kind of help and the technology is there, let's do it.
Well, they are still going to use the chain gang. That's going to be a backup implementation for however they're going to implement this new technology. I'm curious to see how you're going to be able to let them know where the line of markation is.
Right.
Because it's not like you can light up the field the way we see on the TV screen. So
they'll figure this out. They'll figure it out. It's kind of like, and baseball's been fiddling with that stuff with the strike zone and helping umps. And the umps for the one tonight was struggling. I think it was Hunter Wendelstedt, but behind the plate. But for the most part, the umps are pretty darn good. There's some, and we know, the one guy, I'm forgetting his name now, who's just horrendous. But
Angel Hernandez.
What's that?
Angel Hernandez is who you're thinking.
That's it. And baseball probably they'll figure it out eventually. They're probably dragging their feet a little bit. But one of the players made a comment this week, and let me ask you what you think about this. God, I forget the player now. That if the umpires have the pitch com and know what pitch is coming, that may help them figure out the strike zone better and where the ball is and where it's going and why it's going. You know what I'm saying? And that player was just thinking out loud, and it's like, that may not be a bad idea. If you trust the umpires not to tip anyone off about a pitch is coming and he's on the pitch comm like the pitcher and the catcher are, that might allow him or give him a little better perspective on what's coming and what to look for and see the strike zone a little better. I don't know. But this player thought that there were too many missed calls that are screwing players over. And he is right. Look, it works for everybody both ways.
Sure.
But if you're at the plate and you're sitting there at 0-1 and you take a pitch you think's a ball and the guy calls it a strike and it was a ball, now you're down 0-2, you got a problem. That changes the at-bat. 1-1 and 0-2 is a big difference. And I just thought it was interesting the player said that. And, if the players are ready to embrace it and the sport's ready to embrace it, and I'll bring this back to the NFL, I think it's great they're doing this. It's been frustrating, even though I think the officials do a great job, and I'll defend them and what they do, and it's a hard job, and it's tough, and bodies are flying, it's fast. But if there's technology that I've been watching in tennis matches for God knows how many years, and other technology, if I can go to Top Golf and hit a golf ball, and it tells me because there's a chip in the ball or whatever their technology is, how far it went. Why the hell can the NFL not have this?
I agree. If the trial goes well and everyone's on board, the tracking system will be implemented full time for the 2024 NFL regular season. So we will see how
really interesting.
We will see how full implementation goes in the preseason. And look, I just want them to get it right. At the end of the day, I think that's where we all are. And I think that if the NFL adopts it, I think you're one step closer to the NCAA adopting it, as long as it's not a crazy cost, because the NCAA is going to have plenty of money leaving their hands that they thought was once going to be there, as they're apparently settling on this lawsuit. But we may get to that topic. If you haven't heard already, Chad and I did a full deep dive into the Big 12 entering into the settlement for the NCAA lawsuit for NIL.
In the balls and in the golf balls, it would be nice if we had that too, as just golfers, and could find the balls. But you know who's never going to do that? The golf ball companies.
Oh yeah.
Because every time I lose a Titleist, it's another $3 or whatever the hell. It's more than that now. It's $4 to $5. If I lose a Pro V1, that's another $5 or $4 for Titleist.
Well, they also want you to buy the rangefinder where you can see how far you hit the ball and how much other shit are you buying. You have to download the app and pay your monthly subscription to have the.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, there's oh my God.
There's all sorts of stuff for golf. They'd be
gadgets. I spent cutting up on golf gadgets a couple months ago. I didn't even have enough left to buy a goddamn cigar torch to have with me.
They'd be cutting off their nose to spite
a cigar torch if you're going to golf.
Finishing up on some of the Bengals topics
there.
Getting back to the NFL and finishing up some of the Bengals topics yesterday, George, this went viral. Joe Burrow and his hair, his long locks. That this picture went viral last night. It's a fake. His hair does not actually look like this. I'm not. There were plenty of people comparing him to Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader before he is Darth Vader. But I don't know what to make of any of this.
Yeah, I don't know either. And I saw the headline, but I didn't see the picture. And that's the first time I've seen the picture. But his hair would have to grow awfully fast to look like that now. From when we saw him in a news conference, I think he would have to put some of that. What was that?
Horsehair grower or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's not just for men. That's something else he put on there to make it grow like that. I do for men. That's
that would be
more than Rogaine. That would be some gerbilic acid and some other stuff thrown on there.
I feel like that would be 8, 10, 12 inches of hair longer than what he currently has. So that is not his hair. But
that's funny.
That picture did go.
So who put that out?
Did go, I don't know. Whoever it was in any NFL channel as I was scrolling Twitter. All of the Twitter.
What I'm wondering is like, who saw that and thought, okay, maybe that's real. Does it just some random dude Photoshop this and throw it out there and people bid, or?
I don't know, but you had Dan Horde, you had Ben Baby, all reporting from camp today that Joe Burrow's hair is actually it's normal. I'm
trying to remember that guy from the 80s, early 90s that had that hair. God dang.
There's Ben Baby right there reporting Joe Burrow's hair it's normal. So I'm not sure what was going on with that.
But I don't care
Twitter's
if he has a couple of cow pies on his hair. I just want him to on his head. I want him to stay healthy and be Joe Burrow and show up and play on Sundays.
Well, it was another day where he had another deep ball to Jermaine Burton. I don't know if you got to see the highlight on that, but it seems that seems they're connecting, and I don't hate any of that. But there should be
That's
plenty of reps for Jermaine Burton because you have had T. Higgins sitting out OTAs. What are you making of him sitting out?
I'm not surprised at all. That's how these things work. This is how it goes. This is how the game's played. He may stay out until camp. Who knows what happens there? I think the Bengals still feel if they have him and everything else that's going on, they've got a shot to do it this year. And that's their best shot to do it is to have T. Higgins on the field in a Bengals uniform. So I don't see them moving him. I would be very honest with him, though, and I would think the Bengals would be on what their plans are going forward. And I would think T, he's played with these guys. He's a big part of this team. I would think he would want to try to, run it back and make a deep run and maybe go to another Super Bowl as well. So I fully expect him to be totally engaged once this thing kind of blows over. But this is just the way the game is played off the field.
Yeah, he has yet to sign his tender. So that's one of the reasons he can't actually show up to OTAs is because he has not yet signed the tender. If you have not yet signed the tender, then you are not currently technically a part of the team. And so he's not under contract. So he cannot actually show up working out with the team if you're not under contract.
It would be real difficult to be in his shoes and turn down the 21 million or roughly something like that. Leave that on the table and sit on the sidelines when you got a team that's ready-made to make a run. That would be really, really, really difficult to do. And the Bengals know this. But I don't, I just think he will be exactly what's
in the chat. Steve said whatever day Bates reported in 2022 will be the day Higgins reports this year, maybe 2 weeks before start of the season. That said, I wanted to present you with this quote here, George. Jesse Bates was asked about his old teammate. This comes from Mark Raimondi. Jesse Bates was asked about his old teammate T. Higgins' contract situation in Cincinnati. I've been through that process through the franchise tag, and I let it weigh on me a little bit more than I should have, and it affected my play and how I was living my day-to-day life. So my thing for T is just, work on your craft. It don't matter. If this is the contract year, I say it every time. Every year is a contract year. You should go out there and ball out and train like this is one of your last years to play. Bates added on Higgins. He'll be fine. He'll get his payday.
Yep, he's absolutely right. I agree with everything he just said, and first of all, that dude's mature beyond his years. I think
it sounds an awful lot about like what TJ Houshmandzadeh said after he left Cincinnati, went to Seattle, didn't work out so well. And he realized that the grass isn't always greener once you leave and you try and chase the money.
Yeah. And I get that. I do. But sometimes if you have a good deal going, and you're happy where you are, maybe you're not making as much money as you would make across the street. But as you said, the grass isn't always greener. And you're comfortable where you are. And I know sometimes you got to break out of your comfort. I get all that. But sometimes it just works out better to be in your element, in your home, and just plow ahead and try to win games. And none of these guys, at his level, making 21 mil this year, he's going to make a hell of a lot more than that in the future. He shouldn't even be worried about that. But it's not just him. It's his agents. It's the people around him. And I'm not saying they're bad people at all. That's just normal for them to think that way. But sometimes you are better off and in a better spot and end up being happier if you kind of enjoy what you already have and don't think you have to go over there and be like that guy.
And if you're listening and don't understand why we bring up Jesse Bates, A, because he had the franchise tag placed on him by the Cincinnati Bengals, B, they share the same agent. So that's kind of the blueprint is kind of there for what this agent is going to do with the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, I don't know if Jesse Bates would go back and change anything, because he had a great season last year with Atlanta.
Oh my God, yes.
But the success level of the team was not the same as what it would have been had he stayed a Cincinnati Bengals. So you wonder, are you looking for personal success? Are you looking for team success? Are you looking to be part of a rebuild? Are you looking to be part of a team that is contending year after year? And I think that those are where, if you gave him the true serum, I don't know that he would have said that he would have preferred to be where he's at as opposed to being a Cincinnati Bengal, all things being equal.
Now, all of that being said, right? And I agree with it all. However, if you are T. Higgins and you are his agent and you're looking there and you're like, okay, the Bengals, the Rudy jersey, is it signed? It is. I should know that, but my wife bought it a long time ago. It is signed. That just popped up on here. Thanks, Randy. Now, where the hell was I going? Oh, if you're T. Higgins and you're thinking that you got Joe Burrow and his contract, you got Jamar Chase and he's going to get his contract, what are they going to pay another receiver when they just drafted a guy who, as you said, hadn't played a game yet for the Bengals, but he's got a lot of talent? And are they going to give T a long-term deal after this year? Given what else is out there and what's on the table, I don't know. Now, somebody will. Somebody will.
Sure.
And he can control that. But that enters into the thought process. And that could probably make someone feel a little slighted, right?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talk about the same thing when we talk about the Bearcats. And
he's got pride like nobody else. T. Higgins probably thinks inside his head, eventually I'll be a better all-around player when my career's over than anybody else that's a receiver right now, including Jamar Chase.
Well, and like I was getting ready to say, I mean, you kind of are entering that same realm right now as the Cincinnati Bearcats are looking at, they add a guy like Dylan Mitchell. What you're paying him in the NIL, how does that compare to what you're paying the guys who were already here, and a guy like Jizzle who decided to stay, and a guy like Dan who decided to stay? And because those numbers in a small locker room like that are probably going to get out at some point. And so are they looking at each other like, am I better than him? Why is he making more money than me? And I'm sure, whether it's happening in Cincinnati's locker room or not, there are enough locker rooms across these United States that these conversations are happening in many places.
And it's a good question. The Eagles paying Hurts, Smith, and Brown. And I don't know, maybe the Bengals can figure that out. And a lot of that depends on what other positions you have on rookie deals and what you're paying your line and what you're paying. I mean, the Bengals have some big ticket items. But that cat keeps flying up. And it's like every year you think it's going to go up this much and it goes up this much. And so maybe the money will be there.
Yeah, and we've seen the line for what receivers are going to be making this season set by guys like Michael Pittman, set by guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown. So there are certainly some examples for T. Higgins to look at as he's looking around the room and trying to compare himself to guys that are, because I think he considers himself a one. I think this Bengals staff considers him a one, despite them having Jamar Chase, arguably a better receiver on this team as your one. But I think they always have felt that they've had 2 ones with these 2 guys. So I think you're looking around the room and you're wanting to get comps, and I think that the comps are there with guys who have been signed this season. So I think that if they're able to do it, I think they'll do it. But I don't see it happening personally.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, God bless Duke Tobin. That's his problem. But but no, it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. It really is. And God, I don't know. It's such a 3D chess game now with the salary cap and anticipating what it's going to be and what and where you invest your money. And we all know in football, you got to have money in the line too. You got to win the battle up front, or the rest of it doesn't matter. And look, 20 years ago, not even that long ago, the running backs were making the money, and now that is like an afterthought. It's like they're some of them do, but look at what the Bengals just did at their running back position. And I agree with what they did.
I think it was almost a year too late for what they did. I'm surprised that they were able to get anything back.
That's possible, although unlike a lot of it, I thought Mixon played a lot better this year than what he was given credit for.
Look, I thought he played better than I anticipated. I'll say as much, but
it is totally a passing league now. It's a passing league. It's gone, in my lifetime, it's completely gone upside down, which is fine. It's more exciting football. Trust me. When I was a kid, I watched the AFL all the time because they threw the ball around and the NFL didn't. And that's when I was a little kid, by the way. But I can still remember watching the Chargers and the Raiders and the Chiefs and the Jets, and they're in something called the AFL. And all I know is I liked it because, and back then, if you threw 25 passes a day, that was a lot, or 25 passes a game. That was a lot more than you saw in some NFL games.
I don't even know how to transition out of that. Well,
what threw you for a loop that I'm talking about the American Football League?
Yes, I mean that's so old.
We're talking. Well, you're looking at 50-some years old.
I know. I'm just going to barrel through, but there was a development that came out today.
Randy knows. God bless him.
There was a development that came out today from the Cincinnati Bengals as well. They're going to actually be putting money where their mouth is, George.
I'm thrilled. It's great.
It's not the first.
Good faith. This is great.
Now, it's not the first time that they've done such a thing, as they did contribute money, roughly $150 million over the last few seasons, including $40 million in private investment for projects that included the IEL indoor facility, a new locker room, an overhauled and expanded training room, new ribbon video boards, and upgrades to concessions in the Bengals Pro Shop. But they are going to be.
So, Aaron, this includes into that 150 million.
Okay.
They have not put 150 million in, and then are going to spend another 100. They put 50 in, 50 in, and then they're going to spend 100 on top of that. But what I would say, George, this means they're not leaving. The lease is up in 2026.
That's what I think too.
They are not putting $100 million into that place. This is not a family that catches $100 million on fire. So This tells me all that hand-wringing out the door.
And I think you're right, and I hope he's right, because that's obviously for the Bengals, that's a sizable investment. But this also is a good faith investment, in my opinion, that now maybe people will be a little more amenable to the county or the region throwing in a little bit of money to help. I don't think it should all be. I'm the older I get, the more I'm anti-taxpayer throwing in on this stuff, because the NFL makes a hell of a lot of money. However, I still am of the belief there's a lot of value to a region having an NFL franchise and the things that go with it. There is nothing that gets a city on fire more than a Major League Baseball team on fire, an NFL team on fire, a Division I college football team, as we saw when UC made that run to the playoffs. It is incredible for the region. It is a big plus. It's a big plus for companies. And there's a lot of companies that are in the Cincinnati region that love the fact that they can bring people in and they can go to an NFL game right down the street. That's a big damn deal. So there is value for some public investment in that. but it shouldn't be just public investment.
And we haven't actually talked about what that investment is. So here it is. 100 to 120 million is going to be upgrading Paycor Stadium, which will include fan-facing areas such as updated video and audio systems, renovations to suites and club lounges, concession upgrades, and beautification projects. Essentially, when you walk into Paycor Stadium right now, it feels like a big concrete slab that is made to try and look modern, but it's still just a big concrete slab with green seats. And anything they did a lot of improvements over the course of the last 2-3 years, and just
and I hope they continue to do so, and they should. However, you do not need a SoFi Stadium. You do
not here.
Jerry World,
not here.
Those places are ridiculous. I mean, I Jerry World. I'll just give you this: when I'm out there for the Super Bowl, on my side of the stadium, you had to go somewhere else to be able to walk around to the end of the side I was. I mean, there's too much stuff. Too much. It's a damn stadium to watch a damn ball game. I don't need the chair I'm sitting in now, and I don't need, well, I would like Hooters girls delivering my drinks, but I don't need that to watch a ball game. I don't need every luxury. I don't need padded walls in the, well, sometimes I do, in the suite. Sometimes I do because I'm bouncing. But no, it's a freaking stadium to watch a game. I go, you go, we all go to high school games. Do we demand, like, now we're not paying $100 a ticket, but do we demand that or think I should have every luxury in the world? No, we sit on a freaking aluminum bleacher and watch a game. That's what you're doing. And I just think some of this stuff has gotten out of control with these stadiums to the point where you don't even know you're at a ball game anymore.
Yeah, and I was looking today. There was a tweet that came up, something about prices that have gone up. I believe the Houston Texans regular season ticket has gone up from 150, like the lowest one has gone up from like 150 to $300 a game now. It went up. That was the highest jump, but it jumped 99%.
That's insane. And that's somewhere the line has to be drawn. But I was reading, like, some of these arenas and stadiums now, they have, like, indoor golf simulators. Like, who needs that during the game? Go golf. Don't go to the damn game. Why would I go to a Bengals game and then go down and start hitting some 7-irons? Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Not ever. Not ever. No, what I want.
I know. I don't get it. I don't get it. Then why are you at the game?
The only reason I
seat and watch a damn game.
The only reason I can think you would want that, maybe you put that at the Red Stadium because you actually in the off season have where you can do the like top golf type thing in the stadium.
But it's not like I have to have a diversion to bring people in. If your team's so damn bad, you got to have diversions to bring them in. Then you're doing everything fundamentally wrong.
And that's why I love George Vogel, because we end up being two old guys yelling at clouds. That all said, FC Cincinnati wins. Hell is real. They beat the team up 71. The team that reminds me of the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Columbus Crew. They do beat them in the first match that they've had since losing to them in the tournament last year.
Yeah. Yep. That was a good little payback up there. Got them in Columbus. Then, had the win Saturday over St. Louis, and then the midweek match last week, right after we talked, against Atlanta. 6 wins in a row now. And come on, you didn't bring this up.
I haven't bet them. I haven't.
How many goals?
Look, I wore the shirt. Okay. I wore the shirt because they're winning.
Did you bet on them?
I have not bet since they have.
You're not allowed to. And they scored 3.
It's driving me insane, George. Because every week I'm like, well, I was dropping.
You're not allowed.
I know.
I got 6 in a row.
I know.
Yeah, they had 3 goals Saturday night. Lucho Acosta playing out of his mind, right? Exactly. That's why I thought you would start with that. You Could they ever score 3 goals? They finally did. And don't look now. They're 1 point out of first. They're separating themselves from the pack with Miami. What are they up on? 7 points ahead of the third place teams, who are both New York City and New York Red Bulls. Playing very well now. I mean, it's like a switch got flipped on them.
Yeah,
And
you beat Atlanta for
the
the first
MVP's
time.
out of his mind, and they're still missing some guys that are going to come back and help. So they're in a good spot right now. They're doing it right.
All I had to do was stop betting them. What do you know?
Have you been betting on the Reds lately?
I haven't been betting at all because
I'm not bet against the Reds.
Maybe
You'd be rich by now.
I guess. That all said, though,
stuff this podcast, and you'd be doing your own thing somewhere.
That all said, anything going on in high school sports?
No, I should have gotten a better read on the tournament and all that, but they're just in the early rounds, and they'll be getting it going and bearing down on those state championships. And yes, that 19-year-old is proven to be a stud for FC Cincinnati.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for George and I. It was another episode of George in the Jungle, as always, presented by Remington Tavern. You can visit Remington Tavern at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where you have your daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 bourbon whiskey Wednesdays, bottle cap bonanza Thursdays from 7 to 9 p.m., and they can be found on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But with that, George and I will be back with you next Tuesday, 9 p.m., and hopefully there's more winning for us to discuss for FC Cincinnati, for your Cincinnati Reds, and even those Cincinnati Bearcats baseball team. But until then, we'll catch you next week at 9.